be alive in this land of ours. Good to drive in this land of ours.
Hello, Canada hockey fans in the United States.
The Hockey Time Machine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hockey Time Machine. I'm Glenn Dreyfus. Here's a quote. A hockey enforcer accepts the fact that he's always living on the edge of lunacy, but on some nights, the insanity went beyond the borderline. The quote I read came from Alan Globensky's autobiography, A Little Knock Won't Hurt You, My Life as a Hockey Enforcer. It's a tough, honest account, not an easy read, but well worth your time. So let's welcome in Alan Globensky to join us. Hello, Alan. Thank you for making the time.
My pleasure, Glenn. It's always a pleasure, but the music, you've got to get a little Van Morrison in there. I think that would be better, but your choice.
Well, if you're not doing anything and you'd like to be the Hockey Time Machine musical director.
Oh, wow. No, I'd rather go out and talk to the public, the parents of these kids that are playing football and hockey, and explain to them the dangers and the odds of them making a high school team, much less a college or a professional team. But anyway, that's
okay. Let's do that, because in your book, you write, fighting wasn't just tolerated in the youth leagues, it was encouraged. And that as early as age 13 at the bantam level, quote, I was the guy my teammates counted on to add muscle and whip the tough guys and trash talkers on the other side. The point that comes through to me is you were kind of being set up and taken advantage of.
No question. First of all, the book was rearranged completely by the liar lawyers. Not all of them are liars, but because there were some things that were said about certain people and certain things that they said, if you put that in the book, they're going to come back and sue you. So unfortunately, but it still got the point out across. And what I'm thinking is if we can get to the parents and explain to them, and I'm going to lose train of thought here because that's my memory is shot. I take 15 pills a day to keep myself level and don't drink alcohol and all those other things. But I'm enjoying life so much now because I've got people around me that care and love me, and other things are so much better. I'm like I said, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. But what was your question first?
As a junior, as early as age 13, you were being asked to protect the other players and fight. And no 13-year-old should be asked to do that.
I can't say I was asked. And it's the same as when I played junior and pro. I was expected to do those things. And by that, it was the way we were brought up to play hockey. If you look at hockey anywhere else in the world, it is played so beautifully. You know, there's no violence, there's no intimidation. It's just people out there skating, passing, shooting, scoring, doing all the things that you would want to do. We, as North Americans, introduced the violence because the owners knew, wow, we can pack this place. There's two things in North America that sell very well: sex and violence. So that was part of it. Now at 13 and 14, we were allowed, but we were thrown out of the game. later on at 16 and 17, when I was playing junior B, I had a great coach. He said, get into as many fights as you want, because as soon as the fight starts, I'm going to throw everybody on the ice and it's going to be a major brawl. Now, at the end of it, the referees are going to throw the guys that came over the bench out. They're going to forget about you and the guy you were fighting, so you'll still be playing. So that kind of an attitude percolated through hockey for years. And it's unfortunately, and we're very lucky. I still think and hope and pray that it never happens, but somebody is going to get killed at center ice or center field with the kind of contacts, body contact that we have in these sports. But that's my opinion. That's it.
I was going to ask you this later, but since you brought it up, you played a year in Finland and they don't fight there. And the fans whistle at you and don't like it if you do. So that had to be a real eye-opener.
It was. Now, a buddy of mine, Tom Service, who I played with in Quebec, he was going to Finland. And he had no idea what the Finnish hockey league was going to be like. So he thought, hey, I'm going to take somebody that's going to protect me. Now, when I first saw the Olympic-sized rink, I had, where's the binoculars? I can't see the other end. And just watching the practices of the kids, I knew I was way out of my element to try to play hockey here. Now, but Uksi, Kaksi, Kolmanelia, Viis, Kuus, Seitsemän, Galaxin, Yhdeksän, and Kymmenen. That's 1 to 10 in Finnish. There's not a word that comes close to English. We were playing a game in Tampere, and somebody skated in front of me and gave me an elbow. Well, he came around the back of the bench, and boom, I hit him. Down he went, the whistle went, and you're out of the game. You can't fight or throw a punch in European hockey. No problem. After the period, the coach came in his broken English. He said, Al, you're not supposed to fight. I said, yeah, but Esko, they're all cheering and whistling. No. When they whistle, that means they don't like it. So I said, okay, thank you. But it was a learning experience, to say the least, because it was wonderful hockey. But I was just a traffic cop. You go that way, I'll try to chase you, and you go that way, and I'll try to chase you. But that's the difference. So
let's go back to the timeline. You receive a tryout with the Montreal Junior Canadiens, a chance to play with Gilbert Perreault, Richard Martin, Bobby Lalonde.
The best hockey player in the world, Gilbert Perreault. And yeah, I'm biased because I saw him from the end of the bench for a whole season. He is a little bit ahead of Orr because he does everything that Orr does, but in such a classical way. It's just so fluid, everything. And he's a great human being also. So playing in Buffalo, half the people in America they don't know where Buffalo is. They know it's somewhere up north, and that's about it. Playing in Boston, you've got a lot of more media attention. You've got a lot more awareness from the league and stuff. So Perreault suffered in that way. Plus, the big thing, and this is still going on, the French and the English. They don't like each other in Quebec. Well, the rest of Canada feels almost the same way about what Quebec gets away with in their French language charter and other things. So that was a problem also for him.
You tell a story about trying to lay a hit on Perreault in practice.
Yeah. Hartland Monahan's a good buddy of mine, and we played together, obviously. And we used to, once every week or 10 days, we'd say, well, okay, we're going to unload on the, we called them frogs back then, and they called us squareheads. So I'm going to try to get Bert. And I lined him up. He was near the boards with the puck. Well, out of the corner of my eye, he obviously saw me coming and I wasn't going to rail him, like jump up and really hurt him, but I wanted to hit him. Well, as soon as I got close, He put the brakes on. I flew into the plexiglass, and then like those birds that fly into a window, boom, I just crumpled and fell to the ground. And the rest of the team, obviously, they're just sitting there laughing, right? But he was adept. Even at center ice, if you tried that, he would see you coming in and boom, he could hit and knock you down because he was big and strong. If he had played for the Montreal Canadiens at that time with the team that they had, Gretzky would still have to be playing now to break Perreault's records. He would have scored that much more. But that's my opinion again.
Tell us about the intensity of the Quebec Ramparts versus the Junior Canadiens, and also what you called rightly the marquee matchup of Perreault versus Guy Lafleur.
I could see it at the end of the season because there was so much media attention. We didn't play Quebec except in that three out of 5 series heading towards the Memorial Cup. And I could see Perreault being upset because he was reading where Lafleur was driving in a brand new Cadillac or whatever and making $8,000 or $9,000 a year. Bert was making $26 a week. I made twice as much, 52, because I lived at home. Bert had to pay 26. So he was upset by all and everything that was going on. And then, boom, when we got to Quebec, Bert didn't talk much, when he did, you listened, but he got on the ice and we warmed up and everything. And they come for the opening face-off. The referee drops the puck. 8 seconds, 10 seconds later, it's 1-0 for us. Perreault goes through the whole team. Lafleur was at center ice against him and scores. Now, at the end of the second period, we're sitting in the dressing room and we're losing 5-3, 6-4 by a couple goals. And Monahan and a couple other guys are sitting next to me and they're going, we're getting toasted out there. And I said, we're going to win this game. And they looked at me and they said, what, are you crazy? I mean, they're sweating and everything. And I'm sitting there just been on the bench all day, all night. Sure enough, Gilbert goes out and scores a couple of goals, gets a couple of assists. We end up beating them by 2. We beat them the next night. Then we went back to Montreal for the last game because we had to win 3 out of 5 is what it was. We had to win the last game. It was 10-1 for us. Somehow Lafleur must have been on a power play. He was playing defense. Perreault got the puck and started skating down towards the other end. He got to Lafleur, went this way and that way and that way, put the puck through his legs, picked it up, went around the goalie, boom, in the net. Then he came around and helped Guy Lafleur up off the ice, not doing it as a smart aleck move, but just because that's the way and type of person he was. And off we went.
Great story. Another high point, the Junior Canadiens took apart a visiting Soviet national team.
And there again, you remember a couple of years later when Alan Eagleson put that team together and played in, I don't know what they call it, the first time the Russians and the North Americans played against each other. It was an Alan Eagleson, his players were all playing for the team. They picked a couple of other players because if they didn't, the league said, hey, look, you just can't pick your agents. You got to pick. They picked Perreault and they couldn't believe that the coach had played. He was coaching the team when we beat him. I think it was 9-1. And he said, Perreault was the best player I saw, and you're not even playing him. But the media never took up on that, so nobody knew about it. But hey, just an unbelievable player. That's what he was.
And I'd like to, with your permission, go over some of the low points in junior as well, like fans throwing eggs at you in St. Catharines.
Well, it's and the book says most everything that we had back then was yeah, it was true. Again, most of the players got off the ice because they were just getting splattered by these eggs during the warm-up. So Heartland and I decided, well, hey, let's get them back. We got a couple of pucks, and we're still, first of all, we were batting or trying to bat the eggs, when they were throwing at us. We got a couple of pucks and just zipped them right up into the crowd. Unbeknownst to us, we hit a lady, and we must have caused a cut or something, because the place went wild. They had to call the Ontario Provincial Police to escort us out of the dressing room, out of the arena, onto our bus, and then to the border between Quebec and Ontario, because they were so afraid that some of these fans were going to prove or try to show that they were tough guys. But that was part of hockey back then. So,
speaking of fans trying to prove they're tough guys, one of them one night tried to attack you on the bench.
Interesting. I don't remember where we were playing, but from the first period on, and back then they didn't have the same type of, there was openings between the benches and the fans who sat right beside me, and I could talk to them. And I had played a football game the night before and got hit. My nose was probably broken, but I was spitting blood out. And from the first period, when I spit the blood out onto the ice, this one gentleman kept yapping and hey, don't do that, and having a beer at the same time. Well, by the third period, he was pretty much hammered, and I was still doing it. Whenever I had to clear my throat, I did it. And he said, you do it one more time, I'm coming over there, and I'm gonna. And all of a sudden, then I hear my coach said, "Go ahead, I'll hit him." And I looked over at the coach and I said, and he says, yeah, take care of him. So I got up, the person got up, one punch, down he went, and again, in came the crowd. My players comes over and we're throwing sticks back and forth to keep them back. We have to get escorted into the dressing room again and escorted out. But that's how borderline insanity was one of the first titles that we were going to put on the book that we put out there. The great person down in Lewiston, Maine, where I started writing the book, he was the one that really did the writing. He put that as a title, and I thought, hey, that fits perfect. But it is and was and is what it is. So
you mentioned football, and none other than the legendary Bear Bryant at the University of Alabama was interested in you. The CFL Montreal Alouettes were interested in you. You were a place kicker and a halfback, right?
Correct. Growing up, at 6 or 7, I saw a football game on TV. First football game I'd ever witnessed. I immediately became addicted to football. Now, interesting, addiction and passion, 2 different words. But they're when you think about them, they're pretty close. I know addicted people that are very nice. I know passionate people that they're great, but they're a little overboard. I worked my butt off from the time I was 6 until 18. I had gone to a football camp with the Alouettes at 14 years old just to kick and show them I could kick. They brought me back, and at 18, I was able to run the football, do everything. And my father was taking all sorts of phone calls from big time universities wanting me to go and go to university for 4 years. But the Alouettes offered me a contract for $8,500, and I just jumped at it because that was my team. A week later, or 2 weeks later, at training camp, we're down about 30-40 miles away from Montreal. I phoned home to see how things were, and my father says, "You sitting down?" I go, "No, why?" He says, "You want to hear this? Quebec, the WHA, World Hockey Association, had just started. Quebec was a transfer team from somewhere in Los Angeles or California. Now they had to pick up players. Maurice Fillion was the general manager of the team. He was also the coach of the Ramparts when Lafleur and when we beat them. So he had phoned my father and said, look, we're going to give him $5,000 just to sign. And then we're going to give him $15,000 and $20,000 for 2 years guaranteed. Now that's almost 3 times as much money as I'm making playing football. I'm 18 years old. What do you think I'm going to do? Let's grab the money, right? And in the long run, it was probably the best decision. Football, you don't last very long before your body crumples. My body lasted for 10 years. It started crumbling at 35, 40, and 45, and is now, I've had 5 hip replacement operations. I've had 6 knee operations, and I could go on, but I'm alive and enjoying life. So that's the good thing, Clint.
With minor league Lewiston, Maine, and with the Nordiques, you're brawling on a regular basis. And one newspaper columnist writes, in sympathy, I think, quote, like a slave with chains around his neck and feet, Globensky puts on a show from one arena to another. He's forced to do this to earn a living. What was earning a living that way like?
It was when I was young and in the Forum and hearing my name chanted, and my ego went as big as this house. It was, wow, hey, I'm a superstar. I'm this, I'm that. Then after the season started and when I got to Quebec, I said, wait a minute, I want to play too. Now in Lewiston, I got to play. So my general disposition is I'm going to help my teammates. I'm going to help somebody if I'm in a bar and somebody's pushing them. I'm going to go down and try to talk it down. But in hockey, it was just expected that at that time, one fighter on each team. This was before the Flyers, and they ganged up. But it didn't bother me when I was playing. I didn't mind that. When I was sitting on the bench and not getting any ice time in Quebec, I had fights with Fillion and the coach. I said, look, you put me out there and you want me to fight, and then at the end when I get out of the penalty box, I'm back at the end of the bench and I don't get out anymore. I'm not here at your disposal. I'm here because I want to learn how to play hockey. Give me a chance. I wasn't a great hockey player. I was the first to admit it. But, one of my children asked me a couple of decades ago, she said, Dad, why didn't you fight more when you were in Quebec City? Now, she lives down just near Lewiston, so heard a lot about how I played down there and knew I fought a lot down there. And I asked her, Caitlin, why would you ask that question? And she said, well, we'd have a bigger house and we'd have a bigger swimming pool and life would be, I just shook my head. I said, yeah, okay, that's fine. But it wasn't that I disliked fight. That was my job and I had no problem doing it. I mean, I got beat up just as much as I beat up other people. It's not something that 99.9% of the people in the world are going to get in tune to and with. So it's a difficult proposition at best.
Then October 18th, 1975, St. Georges de Beauce, Quebec. An awful sequence of events, starting with the way the Nordiques management manipulated you to eventually the 8 whole seconds you got to play before you were basically assaulted and ganged up on the ice. Would you mind sharing that sequence with us?
Well, it goes back to the season before. There was this gentleman outside of that owned a lot of businesses in and around Quebec. As a matter of fact, he was part owner of the Nordiques. But about 60 miles away in Beauce, he started a team in the same league that the Lewiston team was playing. Now, I was playing in Quebec, and my contract said at the time that I was to remain in Quebec until 25th of November. They weren't going to send me down. Now we're talking October 10th to 12th. I don't remember the date. And I had heard, this was on a Sunday morning after practice, I had heard Saturday night, Lewiston had played Beauce in Lewiston and got trashed and lost the game. Sunday night, they were playing in Beauce, and they had phoned up to the general manager, Maurice Filion, and said, can you send Globinski down? I spent about 3.5 hours arguing in Filion's office saying, no, my contract says I stay here, and I'm not going down anywhere. We went around and back and forth. Finally, he said, get a hold of your player agent or your lawyer. Now, it took me half an hour, got a hold of him. I hear him and Filion talking, and then Filion gives me back the phone. He says, this is your choice, Al. If you don't go down tomorrow or tonight, they'll keep you on the bench until the 25th and send you down and bury you forever. So I reluctantly said, okay, make sure you got somebody to drive me down there. Go pack my equipment up, bring my sticks. So they do that. We get down. We have to wait an hour because Maine's bus had broken down at the border. So they had to send Beauce's bus down and bring the team up. During that time, I'm sitting in the stands waiting, and some of the players are walking in from Beauce. Some of them I knew. Now, back then, in the minor leagues, it was a $50 fine if you're seen talking to a player on the other team, because they wanted the crowd to assume that this was war, that this was, hey, these guys don't like each other. And, they were just like giving me the eyes as if to say, watch out. Before the game, and I found this out later from another friend who got traded from Beauce to Maine, he said the owner came in, put $200, which is like $1,000 today, on the training table in the dressing room and said, the first guy that gets Globinski gets the money. Well, I'm looking out. I'd already seen the program. I knew who the tough guys were. And sure enough, we got all 5 tough guys on the ice. And I'm looking at our team, and our coach, who I found out later why he did it, put the 4 better hockey players, but not fighters, on the ice. They drop the puck. I take the puck. I pass it up to the right wing, who is now vanished. I go over to get it. Out of the corner of my eye, I see somebody already dropped his gloves and coming at me. So I start fighting with him, and all of a sudden, I'm getting hit from both sides and the back and everything else. I go down. I'm, basically unconscious for a little bit. I get up on one knee. I'm looking around and shaking my head. And I'm not blaming the Lewiston team. I mean, who would want to get into a brawl like that and get their heads beaten in, right? That's just the insanity that hockey was.
Thank you for sharing that. And there's another difficult extension, because as bad as things got for you when you were playing, more than 90 fights, at least 60 concussions. But once hockey was over, you went down a dark path. Things were about to get worse. Would you be willing to share that with us?
What we don't understand, and even I've been to see, I don't know how many psychiatrists, psychoanalysts, neurologists, wedding counselors to try to keep my marriage together, because everything was starting just to blow up in my mind. My body was falling apart. I was getting all sorts of operations. My mind started, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, I couldn't really focus. I was very depressed, and then came back up, and then very depressed. So it was back and forth and up and down. Fortunately, I had two wonderful doctors, one down in Lewiston and one up here in Montreal. And they both recognized that I had some big time head problems. I can't walk straight anymore. I have to use ski poles when I go around. I'm not allowed driving. I can't even drive my two-wheeler. But I've also realized a lot of pain is mental. If you keep thinking about it, if you keep relating to it, then things are going to feel pretty bad. They're going to get worse. So what I've done, and I'll attribute it to one of my ex-wives sent a book up with one of my children about 10 years ago when she came up here to stay for a couple of weeks. And it's called Earthing. And to a lot of people, it's going to be, just smoke and mirrors and full of crap. But I believed in it and still do. The energy that you can get from the earth can help you, and it helps me. Have had arthritis everywhere to the point where before I couldn't do this. I couldn't lift my arm. Now, I can do jumping jacks. I've got a punching bag downstairs that I use. I'm just lazy. I'm old. I'm retired. All I want to do, and retarded by the way, but all I want to do is sit and read on my computer or play games or enjoy my wife, her company, and life in general.
So that's part of what pulled you out of the abyss. You mentioned your wife. She's the other reason you were able to climb out of the abyss.
Interesting story. I'm about 17. It's just before I played for the Junior Canadians. We moved into a brand new school, and I'm with my buddy who also played pro hockey, and we're in the foyer, which is a big place. And this girl comes over, very good looking, and she says, "Would you like to come up to my father's camp up north?" And I'm listening and looking her over. But in my mind, I'm going, well, this one, will take a couple of months, maybe longer, to get her in bed. So, she certainly looked great, but it wasn't something that I was going to jump at the time because I was a sex addict, along with being an alcoholic, a drug addict, a gambling addict, and every other thing. But she goes away. Brian and I, my buddies, start walking down the hallway. This other girl, comes up and puts her finger right, almost touching my nose. And I'm kind of backing up. And I'm going, what? And she goes, "That's my sister. And you ain't gonna F her up. Stay away from her." I said, "No problem. I'm not going near her." And it proved out to be great because at the end, before I was suicidal. I know I was for at least 2 years. And my children kept me alive and just wanting to see them and have them grow up. But when I moved up here, I had a vial of pills. I knew where the vodka was and I knew where to go to take it. Nobody would find me for a couple of days and boom. But all of a sudden, everything started to change when things relaxed. Probably getting away from Lewiston all helped because of the memories and the stuff. Here, I have great memories of growing up and playing football in a wonderful community where people, they just took care of all the children. I can remember 21, 22 being out to a supper with my father and him coming up with a story. I says, "Yeah, you remember the time that you threw rocks at that guy's window and broke it?" And I'm going, "You knew about that?" Of course we knew about it. I says, as long as it was within the boundaries of being a kid growing up, our community was that close and helped most people. So interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. And right now I want to ask Luigi Buffone to join us. Luigi is an actor, writer, and director. He thought it was interesting too. And he's partnering with Alan on a documentary. So welcome, Luigi. And tell us all about your interest and your interaction with Alan.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everybody. Hey, Alan. Nice to see you.
Reggie.
Yeah, so great story. So about 2 years ago, I was promoting a play that I had written and produced, and I'm waiting in the green room at the TV station, and I met Alan. I didn't know who Alan was. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a big hockey fan, so I don't know. I really don't know much about hockey. So, but I met Alan, and we had a bit of small talk and all that, and then he went on to do his interview before me. So I got to watch his interview on the television in the green room. And when he started talking about his book and about his life story, I just immediately got captivated. Even if you're not a hockey fan, I mean, you'll get captivated by Alan's story. And I mean, to me, I wasn't watching an interview. I was watching a movie. So that's how that all started. So after the interview, I got in touch with Alan, and we've been friends ever since. And we've been working on this film project together.
And how do you put together a life story like Alan's? Because there's a lot of his story we haven't even touched on.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can't make a film of his whole life story or the whole book. It's not going to be the whole book. It's really going to be inspired by Alan's story. And there's going to be a lot of different parts. And it's going to be mostly after Alan retired. Because usually, like a lot of these movies especially about sports or stuff like that, you see the person get famous and all that, and how they, all that journey, but you never see the after. After he retired, the hardships and a lot of different difficult things that Alan went through, and that's what we're mostly concentrating in. Like he'll, in the movie, we'll have, of course, different flashbacks of his career and stuff like that, but it's going to be mostly concentrated on his career after hockey, because I just feel that's usually, there's a lot of movies that don't tell that story. And I remember when we were talking to Alan, and we asked him, like, when I say we, it's because I'm working with another writer and another director that I know. So, and we asked him, like, what would be the message that you'd want from this movie? And right away, without thinking, he clearly said, the message that I would want is to stop fighting in youth hockey. And that's what the message that we're trying to get across. And and Alan, I mean, as you read the book, Alan has such an interesting story. And that's why we're doing this movie.
Do you expect that there's going to be a lot of pushback from the large number of hockey fans who are pro-fighting and just aren't interested in hearing about how it scrambles one's skull and can have psychological effects, and they just want to go to their games and drink their beer, and they don't care if it's teenagers or pros or anything? They just want to see their frustrations being answered through the gladiators on the ice.
Right. So, I mean, there's going to be always somebody that's going to, not like that idea or whatever. But I think that it's, especially to people like the parents and stuff like that. So they're going to appreciate the movie. They're going to get it's going to be a good message. And I'm sure that those people that, everybody likes to see excitement. Of course, I understand what that person sees in the fighting and the, it's a show and it's exciting. And yes, people fight, but they never see the person after. They never see a couple of years later what happens to that hockey player, that enforcer, that football player that goes through a lot of difficult times. That they don't see that, and that's why I think it's going to be interesting to a lot of different people, and even to the people who are big fans of fighting. maybe they don't know stories like Alan's.
There is one part you're going to have to CGI because Alan his car once ran into a moose.
Right.
And I'm going to need to see this in the documentary. I don't know what you're going to do, or maybe you can use that claymation, but
yeah.
Luigi's doing a great job. He's going to get the message across much better than I can because upstairs it's not all put together.
No.
Any body contact before 18 years old should be eliminated, period. And allow the youth to come up at 18. He can make the decision, or she can make the decision. It's coming about that way. If they want to take the step to possibly end up like me, but their passion or their addiction is playing hockey or playing football, I want to do it. Great. But at 14, 15 or younger, they don't need to be pushed in that direction. Let them make the choices. And Luigi, we just need to find somebody with a lot of money that can back up what we want to put out there. So that's the way it is. And I'm collecting bottles all over the place, cashing them in, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Luigi, any idea when and where we might see this production?
For sure, it's not going to be right away. It's going to be in a couple of years. I mean, there's a lot of, making a movie is a lot of work and a lot of time. We're almost finished the script. The end of April it should be done, and then it's a lot of development. We got to go get money, grant money, or private investor money, stuff like that. So there's a lot of different steps before we really begin. Once the pre-production begins, I mean, once production begins, should go quickly. So, I don't want to say, a date, but it's not going to be right. Like, it's not going to be this year. Let's just say that.
Is there anywhere that people can keep up with the progress of the production?
Yeah, so we have a website. So the website it's my name, luigibuffoni.com. But if you Google Mugged on Center Ice, that's our working title for now. It's called Mugged on Center Ice. You'll fall on our site, and we're constantly updating different information. You can see a bit more information about Alan and a bit of his career and who's working on the project and all that good stuff.
Luigi, we wish you all the success. We will be visiting the website and hoping that the pennies from heaven descend on you. Maybe not just pennies, maybe more than that.
Yeah.
So that you and Alan can tell his story. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was
thanks, Luigi.
Thank you. Bye, guys. Bye, love you too.
And Alan, I'm also going to ask you to stand by. Don't go too far away because we're going to have you back in a few minutes.
No problem.
Okay.
Nice talking
so stand by.